What kind of a woman was Abigail? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel chapter 25, verses 14 to 22. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Samuel 25, verse 14. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 25, beginning of verse 14. Now one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us both day and night, all the time we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore, know and consider what you will do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his household. For he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him." Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. And she said to her servants, "Go on before me. See, I am coming after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. So it was, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under the cover of the hill. And there were David and his men coming down towards her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him. And he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so, and more also, to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light." In our last lesson, we met a man named Nabal. Nabal was a wealthy man, a man who was a descendant of Caleb back from the days of Joshua. But he was also a harsh man and evil in all his doings, a fool, if you will. And when David had sent messengers to him, seeking provisions due to the kindness he had shown Nabal's shepherds and shearers in the field, Nabal feigned knowing who David was, giving the excuse that by giving provisions to David, he would have to take from his own hired laborers, something that was not true. When news got back to David, David was furious, so much so that he gathered some of his men together to come and punish Nabal. And that's where we pick up the story in verse 14. Nabal's wife is named Abigail. She is described as a woman of understanding and one who was beautiful to behold. However, it wouldn't be her beauty that she would use in this story, but her intellect, reason, resourcefulness, and compassion. When messengers came to Abigail to report what her husband had said to the servants of David, in spite of David having protected them in the fields while tending to the sheep and shearing them, Abigail didn't go and chastise her husband, nor did she delay in trying to solve the problem. She acted. Now, why didn't Abigail go to her husband and try to reason with him? Most likely because she knew what type of man he was, for after all, she was married to him. There are some men who are so stubborn and set in their ways that no amount of reason will get them to change their minds. But this time, Nabal's stubbornness was likely going to get him killed if she didn't act, and so Abigail acted to try and prevent bloodshed. In acting here, Abigail also showed that she loved her husband in spite of his faults. Let's be clear, Nabal was not a nice man. He wasn't a smart man. But that didn't give Abigail the right to let her husband get killed if she could help it. So what did Abigail do? She gathered up at least some of the provisions that David sought. 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 already slaughtered and prepared sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs. A seah is estimated to be between 8 to 15 liters or 2 to 4 gallons, so 5 seahs would be 40 to 75 liters or 10 to 16 gallons of roasted grain. This was a bounty that she was bringing for David and his men, a token of appreciation for what David had done, and a way of apologizing for the actions of her husband. She made haste to deliver this to David without telling her husband, for she knew that he was coming, and she knew that if she told Nabal, he might attempt to stop her. Meanwhile, David's disposition towards Nabal is only worsening. Here David is, having done good to Nabal's shepherds and shearers, and Nabal having repaid David evil for good. He calls on God to do so and more to the enemies of David if he left one male of all who belonged to him by morning light. In this, we see that David was not only going to punish Nabal, but he was going to punish the entire household of Nabal, seemingly the servants too. The question that a lot of people have is, was David justified in his anger and the judgment he was going to mete out? I know we said we'd discuss it in this lesson, but we are going to discuss it, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 25, verses 23 to 31, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.